The idea that good people go to heaven is perhaps the most pervasive misconception about the Christian faith. It relies on the assumption of a cosmic scale, a system where our moral successes are weighed against our failures, and we simply hope the balance tips in our favor. But when we subject this merit system to the scrutiny of logic, the foundation disappears. If God's standard is absolute holiness, then the good enough defense isn't just a comfort, it is a logical impossibility. Today we are examining why. To truly dismantle the good person myth, we have to look at the nature of standards. Most of us judge our character by comparison. We find someone with more obvious flaws and use them as a moral floor to make ourselves feel elevated. We tell ourselves, I'm not a thief, I'm not a murderer, therefore I'm on the right track. But from a reasoned perspective, a standard based on comparison is a moving target. It's subjective. If you're in a room of thieves, the man who only steals once a week looks like a saint, but he's still a thief. Biblical logic doesn't use a sliding scale. It uses a benchmark of absolute holiness. Think of a high-stakes requirement like a sterile surgical environment or a clean room for microchip manufacturing. It isn't good enough if the air is 99% clean. If a single particle of dust or a single microbe enters that space, the standard of sterile has been fundamentally violated. The almost clean room is functionally the same as the dirty room because the requirement was absolute. The Bible presents God's holiness as this kind of absolute environment. Romans 3:23 doesn't say we missed the mark by a little bit. It states, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." The phrase "come short" in the original context implies a failure to reach a destination. If you're trying to jump across a 100-foot chasm, it doesn't matter if you fall short by 2 feet or 50 feet. The result is the same. In the logic of eternity, good enough is a fallacy because God's glory, His perfect nature, is the destination. If the requirement is perfection, then being better than average is statistically interesting, but logically irrelevant. You are either at the standard or you are short of it. Most of us subconsciously treat our morality like a ledger. We hope that by the end of the day, our credits of kindness, honesty, and generosity will outweigh our debts of selfishness or failure. We tend to believe that God is looking for a net profit in our character. However, in any reasoned judicial system, this ledger logic is fundamentally flawed. Think of the law not as a point system, but as a baseline. If you drive the speed limit for 20 years, you haven't earned a credit that allows you to drive recklessly today. Your long history of following the rules is simply what was required of you as a citizen. It is the baseline. A judge doesn't look at a thief and say, because you were kind to your neighbors for 10 years, your theft is now legal. The good acts and the illegal acts exist in two completely different categories. The good does not pay for the bad. It simply fulfills a different part of life. This is the weight of the biblical perspective on human merit. Isaiah 64:6 describes it in stark, uncompromising terms. But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousnesses are as filthy rags. And we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us away. To a modern ear, filthy rags might sound like a moral insult. But from a reasoned standpoint, it is a statement about the source of the action. If the fountainhead of a river is poisoned, every gallon of water that flows from it carries that poison, no matter how clear it looks at the surface. Consider the logic of contamination. If you have a white cloth that is deeply stained, you cannot clean it using a bucket of water that is already dark with ink. You might scrub with all your might, but you aren't removing the stain. You're merely spreading the contamination. If our very nature is unclean by the standard of absolute divine holiness, then even our best acts, our righteousnesses, are produced by a source that is already compromised. This is why merit fails. It isn't that good deeds aren't better than bad deeds in a social sense. It's that they are logically incapable of addressing the systemic problem of our nature. We cannot bridge the gap because we are trying to build the bridge with the same materials that caused the collapse in the first place. We are attempting to use the very hands that accrued the moral debt to pay it off. If our best efforts are logically irrelevant to our moral standing, and if our nature is fundamentally contaminated, the situation appears terminal. From a reasoned perspective, we are at an intellectual dead end. This is precisely where the Christian message departs from every other religious or moral system. To understand the solution, we must distinguish between two very different types of transactions: a wage and a gift. A wage is a legal obligation. It is something you earn through your actions. If you work 40 hours, your employer owes you a payment. That payment isn't a gesture of kindness, it's a debt they are required to pay. If they don't pay it, they are unjust. The Bible applies this economic logic to our lives in Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Notice the word wages. It implies that death, which in a biblical sense is spiritual separation from the source of life, is the earned result of falling short of the perfect standard. It is the paycheck for our contamination. If we insist on a system of merit, if we want what we have earned, then we are asking for a wage that leads to a terminal result. But the second half of that verse introduces a completely different category: the gift. A gift, by definition, is independent of the recipient's performance. If you have to work for it, it ceases to be a gift and becomes a wage. Think of it this way. If you pay even a single cent for $1 million house, the transaction changes from a gift to a purchase. The moment merit enters the room, grace, or unmerited favor, leaves. Ephesians 2:8 and 9 clarifies this. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. This is why being rescued or accepted by God is described as a gift. It isn't a reward for the good people who tried their best. It is a lifeline for the unclean who recognize they have no currency to pay the debt. From an intellectual standpoint, this is the only solution that preserves both the absolute holiness of God and the survival of humanity. If God lowered his standard to accommodate us, he would no longer be perfectly holy. If he kept the standard and demanded we earn it, no one would survive. Grace is the third way, where the standard is met by another and the result is offered as a gift to be received, not a goal to be achieved. Even after understanding the logic of the standard and the nature of the gift, many people, both religious and secular, attempt to construct what we might call a hybrid system. It is a comfortable middle ground, where we acknowledge that we aren't perfect, but we assume that our sincere effort acts as a down payment, and God's favor simply covers the remaining balance. We like to think of salvation as a collaborative project, where we do our part and he does his. However, from a reasoned and logical standpoint, these two categories, grace and works, are mutually exclusive. They cannot exist in the same space at the same time. To understand why, we have to look at the definitions. Works is a system of merit where value is exchanged for performance. Grace is a system of favor where value is given despite a lack of performance. Consider the logic of a transaction. If you go to buy a vehicle that costs $50,000 and you pay $49,999, while the seller graciously forgives the final dollar, you have still purchased that car. It is not a gift, it is a purchase with a small discount. The fundamental nature of the transaction is still based on your payment. For a gift to truly be a gift, the recipient's contribution must be zero. If the contribution is even 1%, the logic of the gift evaporates and is replaced by the logic of debt and earned equity. Romans 11:6 defines this boundary with the precision of a mathematical equation. And if by grace, then is it no more of works. Otherwise grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. Otherwise work is no more work. Notice the phrase, no more. The Apostle Paul is using the law of non-contradiction. He is stating that the moment you introduce work, or human merit, into the equation, the category of grace ceases to exist. It is chemically altered into something else. This is why the misconception that good people go to heaven is so dangerous to the logic of the gospel. It attempts to mix two incompatible systems. If you are standing on your goodness, you are standing on a system of merit, and as we established earlier, that system requires absolute perfection. You cannot lean on your performance on Mondays and God's mercy on Tuesdays. It is an all or nothing proposition. You are either relying entirely on your own ability to meet an infinite standard, or you are relying entirely on a gift that was paid for by someone else. You cannot have one foot in both worlds. We have traveled a long, logical road to arrive at a single, unavoidable conclusion. The idea that good people go to heaven is a misconception that collapses under the weight of an absolute standard. From a distance, the good person defense seems fair, but when we zoom in, the logic fails at every level. If the standard for eternity is the perfect holiness of God, then our comparison to other people is irrelevant. If the ledger of our lives is stained by even a single contamination, then our own righteousness cannot wash it away. And if salvation is a gift, then any attempt to earn even a fraction of it through merit is a rejection of the gift itself. This misconception is uniquely dangerous because it is so inclusive. It traps the non-believer in a cycle of comparison and the believer in a cycle of performance. It keeps us looking at our own hands rather than at God's character. And this brings us to the final logical clarification. If our goodness is not the key that opens the door, does that mean the life of a Christian is a life of moral indifference? Not at all. But we must be precise about the reason for our actions. In a system of merit, you do good things to be accepted. It is a transactional, fear-based effort to secure a wage. In the biblical system, you do good things because you are already accepted. It is a relational, gratitude-based response to a gift. One is building a bridge to reach God. The other is walking on the bridge God has already built. The correction to this misconception is a shift in focus. It is not about your performance. It is about God's character. It is not about how good you can become. It is about how merciful He already is. When we replace the myth of human merit with the reality of divine grace, we move past cultural noise and into the reasoned clarity of the truth. We stop trying to be good enough for a perfect God, and we start resting in the God who is perfect for us. Thanks for watching today. If this video helped clear something up for you, if it sparked a new question, or you made a decision to follow God, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out directly at rootedreasoned@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and TikTok at rootedreasoned. We use your questions to shape our future videos, so don't hesitate to get in touch. Until next time, stay grounded in the Word and reasoned in your faith.